A very good morning to you. Many thanks for joining us. You're watching Political Spectrum and it's live on Spectrum Television. Hello from me. I am Raymond Aita. We're putting you through all the day's biggest political news stories and events as it relates to the conduct of the 2023 general elections. The first of which we saw on February 25, where the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, against the resolve of political opponents and international observers who had monitored the exercise, went ahead to announce the APC presidential candidate and standard bearer, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, as president-elect. Well, INEC is gearing up for the conduct of the second of the two major elections we are expecting in the country. Set your alarm clock for March 11, make that the Saturday, when Nigerians are expected to head out to the polls again, only this time to elect governors and representatives at the state houses of assembly across the country. We'll do a bit to fill you up to speed with the level of preparations by INEC, just so we could not just juxtapose the conduct of both elections, but the aftermath of what trailed last exercise, where Nigerians, of course, in large numbers have discredited the outcome of that poll, citing irregularities in several polling units, alleged manipulation of the exercise by INEC staff in connivance with some political parties, most of whom have called for an outright cancellation of the elections, while others have said they will channel their grievances to court. Well, one of the have actually said they will head to court, but have equally exercised right and liberty by taking to the streets to protest. Is the main opposition party in the country, the People's Democratic barricaded the headquarters of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, in protest over the outcome of the last general election. Well, there's been some level of reactions as well to the protest by the PDP, which, by the way, was headed by the presidential candidate of the party and former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, in company of his running mate and Governor of Delta State, Ifeanyi Okowa, the national chairman of the party, Iyorchia Ayu, as well as other bigwigs of the PDP. Well, they not only took their protest to the headquarters of INEC, they blocked all the passages leading to the electoral umpire's office. And amongst their prayers were not just for a seamless conduct of the March 11 governorship and state houses of assembly polls. They've also asked the INEC chairman, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, to resign from his role as the chairman of INEC. Well, we know INEC has clearly stated that the outcome of the February 25 polls was a true reflection of its promise to deliver free, fair and credible polls for Nigerians, much of which has gone against the expectations of most Nigerians, including the observers who had monitored that exercise. Well, later on, we're going to play you a clip by one of the observers who had monitored the February 25 polls and cited areas of massive irregularities that perhaps should have been enough to cancel the elections, but INEC, of course, did go ahead to announce the result as we have today, which declared Bola Tinubu of the APC as the presidential or the president-elect for the country. And let's focus on the content of the PDP's protest that we saw yesterday. The APC, by the way, has reacted to the PDP's protest. Festus Keyamo, who is the spokesman of the All Progressives Congress Presidential Campaign Council, has mocked the People's Democratic Party, PDP, over its protest in Abuja. Well, Keyamo described the protest as a funeral procession, that was led by those he referred to as the undertakers, who had refused zoning prior to the presidential election. And clearly this message, as we know it, is targeted at the PDP presidential candidate, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar. We know, of course, that Atiku Abubakar's emergence as the candidate of the PDP was equally opposed by members of his own party, led by Governor Nyesom Wike of Rivers State, which led to the formation of the G5, or the so-called Integrity Group, made up of 5 governors who had refused to acknowledge the candidacy of Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, citing the fact that power should have been allowed to return, to the south. And perhaps most political observers have said this necessitated the reason behind Governor Wike supporting the candidacy of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu of the APC. We've heard of allegations of results of the Rivers State election being largely doctored. And a few days ago, precisely over the weekend, we saw the Nigerian army issue a statement to buttress the claim that Governor Nyesom Wike had deployed the use of thugs to truncate the electoral process. And they have said they will do all within their powers to ensure that those who perpetrated this act were actually brought to book. Now, staying with the protests of the PDP yesterday, Atiku and his party, the PDP, frowned at the election, which they claimed was flawed with irregularities and electoral malpractice. However, as I said, Festus Keyamo, a spokesman of the APC Presidential Campaign Council, had mocked the PDP leaders for adorning black dresses during the protest. He called it a funeral procession. And that's because everyone who took part in that protest actually came out in black attires. And the APC has taken this to another height of gimmicks and comics in the politicking that has engulfed Nigeria in the last few weeks, describing the protest as more or less a funeral procession. And they said if you observe the way a spokesman for the PDP cries like a baby every minute on video, then you will realize that his bogus life and future depended on their warped expectations of Atiku's victory. And he ended it by saying, this is what happens to you when you venture into politics without a second address. Well, whatever Festus Keyamo meant by this tweet, be rather sure that Nigerians have reacted in equal measure because a lot of reactions to his tweet yesterday seem to suggest that Mr. Festus Keyamo, a senior advocate of Nigeria, and before his venture into politics was widely viewed as a leading human rights activist in the country. Well, whether his popularity amongst most Nigerians had dropped ever since he majored into politics, got an appointment as a minister in the current administration of President Buhari, and also a spokesman of the APC Presidential Campaign Council, may have demerited most of the gains that he made over the years as a human rights activist, fighting and standing on the side of the people. But we'll leave all of that politics now. We'll get your reactions as well, as we often do later on. Your expectations in particular of INEC and the readiness to conduct the March 11 polls, because everyone has now seen the APC has won the presidential election, according to the figures released by INEC, by the way, which means everyone is now preparing for the March 11 showdown. Yesterday, we did talk about the level of voter apathy that is likely to rise in the event that the March 11 governorship and state houses assembly polls does not reflect a true picture of the over 93 million plus voters that were registered on INEC's voter register to take part in this election. A good number did come out on February 25, but a bulk of their hopes were dashed because INEC, of course, did not give Nigerians what they expected by way of conducting a free, fair and credible polls. We've over the time cited the irregularities that were mentioned, the fact that some polling units did not have elections take place at all, largely owing to the fact that INEC officials did not turn up on time. And also there were allegations of the fact that even though they arrived, most of them did not come there with election materials. I mean, no ballot papers, no beavers. So how then were elections expected to take place? But surprisingly, we had results announced in most of those places. It raises questions about INEC's credibility and whether the electoral umpire haven't been compromised, because they seem to have gone back on their word and promise that areas where irregularities were cited would lead to an outright cancellation of the process in that particular polling unit, and then elections would be done afresh. We didn't see any of that. One of the faults of missing beavers, I'll dwell on two states, the state of Osun and Kaduna State. In Osun State, the INEC chairman claimed 2 beavers were actually missing, but were replaced by 2 new beavers. In the case of Kaduna, we were told that 5 beavers were actually stolen, but were later recovered and used for the elections. Now, On what premise can INEC assure Nigerians that the 7 beavers in question, 2 in Osun and 5 in Kaduna, which were missing as at the start of the elections, but later produced after 7 or 8 hours only to be used for that same election? How can we tell that none of these machines were compromised in terms of authenticating properly the number of voters who were to cast their vote in that particular unit, and then the results that were likely going to be uploaded on INEC's IREF and portal? Now, that's another matter altogether. The refusal of INEC to transmit the election result electronically. One of the dramas that ensued at the National Coalition Center, as we all know it, was the fact that the PDP and the Labour Party agents walked out in the of results from across the country. Senator Dina Malaye, who was a national agent of the PDP at the Coalition Center, was the first to take this move when he staged a walkout on Mr. Mahmood Yakubu, because not only did he claim that some figures did not just tally. Ekiti State, for instance, was in the eye of the storm. The results that came in from some polling units, as a matter of fact, from the entire collation of results from Ekiti State, which was read out by the returning officer at the Collation Center, did not match the ones that were displayed on the results sheet. So how in the world did INEC go ahead to announce the result when the numbers in question did not just match? And that's the first question. Secondly, why were results not transmitted electronically as provided for in the Electoral Act? Different twists and fits to this one. The Senate presidents came out to say that there were no provisions within the Electoral Act that allowed for an electronic transmission of results. But as we know it, this was one of the touching points that led to President Buhari refusing to sign the Electoral Act 3 times until he finally did it at the 3rd time of asking. One of the reasons that he refused to do so was clarity on whether or not election results would be transmitted electronically, and then the former debate about the direct and indirect mode of primaries that a lot of political parties did not find funny and alien to their own constitution. Well, it's a surprise that INEC, who came out sometime in May 2022 to explain the rationale behind the reason to transmit election results electronically, later came out to deny that there were no such provisions. As a matter of fact, INEC deleted a tweet where they explained that Section 50 subsection B had made provisions for the transmission of election results electronically. So a lot of these questions have led to reasons why there were speculations in some quarters that probably Professor Mahmood Yakubu has been compromised by the ruling All Progressives Congress to truncate this election in favor of the APC. Well, these are more issues we'll dwell on. When we come back from this break, I will play you a clip by one of the election observers citing massive irregularities and calling for a cancellation of the polls and perhaps some sort of watchword for INEC as they prep up for the March 11 governorship and state houses assembly polls. You're watching Political Spectrum. Stay with us. When we come back from this break, the program continues.
Sadly, some party members and agents still engage in election lobbying and vote buying by getting account details of some uninformed voters with promise to make transfer. Pan-Africanist Women Project condemn this in her strongest terms possible and recommend stiffer punishment for the offenders. Inducement was done across party lines. For instance, in Utumidim in Abak 008, and a PDP party agent was seen in the polling unit holding a bag of content where PVC belonging to voters. As the voters appear in the unit, he picked their card from the bag and attached money to them. In Ukot Okoro Primary School in Asen Udim, voters were voting without the senatorial ballot papers. Also at the Civic Center, SCN Road, Ward 2, Unit 2A, APC chieftain asked voters on the queue to write their account details for a transfer. Ika local government area in Eben Ward 1, comprising of 10 units. Thugs invaded the units armed with guns and chased away voters, allowing only APC voters on the queue. In Achan Ward 1, Unit 5, only APC voters were allowed to vote, as the APO was compelled only accredited APC voters. Same scenario played out in Urban Unit 2, Unit 001, 004, and Unit 005. Thugs of APC invaded the unit, compelling INEC officials to allow only APC members to vote. In Odoro, Ward 1 and Ward 2, and Ito, Ward 1 and 2, same incident happened. Ibono local government area, in Ward 6, Unit 5, the presidential results sheet was torn due to the fighting by voters as thugs emerged at the polling unit and to disrupt the voting process. At the end, our observation team intervened by speaking to the voters, who remained calm until the INEC officials went to the RAC center to bring new result sheets. In Ward 11 and the entire units, there were no elections as sensitive material were burnt by thugs by YPP and PDP.
We recruited in the nation 380 short-term and 20 long-term observers, making it 400 observers. So in Akwa Ibom, we had in the polling units 180 of them working with us. So every local government had observers. But what we are trying to do in this press briefing is to see how we can correct the ills. We are speaking not just to the media that elections did not take place because of discrepancies, because of malfunctioning of the beavers, because of men of the society who are called thugs that invaded polling units, carted away materials. So if INEC, who is an electoral body, is announced to the public that INEC should go back this week on the 4th of March and conduct elections in places that voters were disenfranchised. Because these voters left home since morning. For the first time, we've observed elections in Africa and see voters turning up at polling units at 6:45 a.m. It has never happened in Africa. This is a record-breaking event.
Well, a record-breaking event and what should have been celebrated across board by Nigerians with high hopes and expectations that this would be, if not the best, one of the best elections that has been held in the annals of the nation's political history. A turn from sweet to bitter in the mouths of most Nigerians. So we just watched a clip from a press conference organized by the Pan-African Women's Group, who were, by the way, one of the accredited observers out of the over 38,000 observers who monitored the Presidential and National Assembly polls that took place on February 25 this year. And as you've heard from the spokespersons of the group there, discrepancies were monitored across board as far as this election were concerned. Cases of voters turning up as early as 6:45 a.m. As a matter of fact, if you joined us on our live election studios during the Presidential and National Assembly polls, we did bring you reports that most persons had even turned up as early as 5 to 6 a.m. in expectations to cast their votes. But disappointingly, most of them were disenfranchised because elections did not hold at all in most of these areas. But it begs the question, and perhaps for those who have said there's nothing wrong with the outcome of these elections, the Bola Ahmed Tinubu won fair and square, how in the world did INEC announce results in areas where elections did not take place at all? And here is the INEC chairman telling us that the elections were free, fair and credible. Well, as far as it's said, you can go to court for all you want. Yes, we know the court is the right place to seek redress on issues such as this. And even President Buhari has come out to say, for those who feel aggrieved by the conduct of the polls, take your grievances to the courts and not to the streets. It doesn't mean that we can see black and then call it white. Elections did not take place in many quarters across the country, yet we had results announced from those units. So where did INEC manufacture those results from? There were also concerns that some areas where elections took place, the results could not be uploaded on the INEC iRef portal, which was a candid provision made towards the build-up of this election. So it begs another question. Where did INEC get the results that they announced in areas where it wasn't uploaded on their portal? For those who were at the National Coalition Center, and we did our bits to bring you clips from the footages that showed INEC announcing the results state by state as they came in, it was very glaring, in full glare of the old world, that most of these results seem to have been doctored because they did not reflect a true picture of the votes that were cast on ground. So where did INEC get those results from? And I think for those who have decided to take to the street, as the PDP did yesterday, they are within their rights to do so, especially when you have all the opposition parties coming together to have a joint press conference calling on the INEC himself from his position as the leader of the electoral umpire in view of the March 11 polls coming up, and then election observers also agreeing with the fact that elections were largely compromised across the country, including the international observers. Then INEC should have done right by Nigerians by calling for a rerun of the polls, especially in areas where voting did not take place or areas where there were large-scale voter intimidation. We brought you a clip, and you've equally heard it there from the observers who spoke a short while ago, that there were some areas where voters were threatened not to vote for other political parties except for a major party or who had a stronghold in that area. How were elections in this place collated and eventually announced? It made the entire exercise a mockery and a national embarrassment for Nigeria to the rest of the world to see. So it has raised the question, if INEC did not get it right on February 25, who's to say that they're going to get it right come March 11? There were cases and reports of INEC ad hoc staff working in connivance with some political parties to truncate the electoral process. So how do we know that this incident would not repeat themselves again come March 11? The March 11 polls are a bit closer to the people than the February 25 elections, because you're not electing a president here, you're electing a governor of your respective state. You're electing State House of Assembly members who are representing you from your direct constituencies for the next 4 years. So people should take more interest in what happens at the grassroots level. But just how many persons will want to go out to exercise their electoral franchise when they know that their votes will not count? To speak to a lot of persons and a lot of Nigerians to get their assessment of the February 25 polls, and everyone feels they've been largely deceived by INEC, because the build-up to the elections came with so much assurances from INEC that this election would be free and fair. So much so that INEC extended the deadline for the CVR registration, that's the continuous voter registration exercise, so those who did not register for the elections would do so. It happened by a further 3 months. What about the PVC collection? INEC extended it by another week from the initial deadline of January 31 to February 5th. So those who did not get their PVC, of that number, over 86 million reportedly collected their PVCs across the country. So let's say we had 86 million persons willing to go out to cast their vote. Roughly of that number, we could say around 60 to 70 million people had gone out to vote, because we know there were large scales of reports of disenfranchisement because some persons could not access their polling units. And that's because INEC, in the lead up to the elections, had cancelled some polling units. So we heard reports of some persons going to polling unit A, and then they were told that their polling unit has been moved to polling unit B without proper information as to where they were supposed to go cast their vote. Now that blame rests solely on INEC, and if that is the case, Why isn't INEC taking steps to organize rerun elections in these areas, and yet they went ahead to announce the elections? And expecting Nigerians to stomach this result hook, line, and sinker is unbecoming of the electoral umpire whom many expected much from. But the bigger question here that a lot of persons have been asking too, what is the role of Mr. President in all of this? Before the elections, most of the gimmicks that were put out by the federal government were the narrow redesign policy, for instance, which the president said was to deter large-scale vote buying or vote trading. But we still had incidences of vote buying and vote trading in the course of this election. As much as there was a scarcity of cash, most political parties and candidates resorted to cash transfers. Yes, we saw the EFCC being deployed and other anti-graft agency deployed to some polling units just to deter excesses of vote buying or vote trading. But it still happened in full glare of the anti-graft agencies who were there, in the full glare of security operatives who were supposed to provide security and checkmate these excesses. If all of this had happened and documented evidences, including video footages to show that there were election irregularities in many areas, the million-dollar question is, why did INEC go ahead to announce the result? And what's the president going to do about this? Well, Nigerians should have faith and trust that he would deliver. Well, it could just be politicking, because they ensued in the course of campaigning when some person said, money. Current body language seems to suggest so, because not only did he endorse him for president, he quickly came out to congratulate him in the face of his victory, in spite of the massive irregularities that were recorded and reported across the country. So what is the president doing in all of this? Well, he has asked the aggrieved parties to take their grievances to court. Now, that's another big question. Let's take a redesign policy. Mr. President did not respect the Supreme Court's ruling that asked for a stay of hands on further implementation of the narrow redesign policy. The first ruling came on February 8th. It was adjourned to February 22nd. The Supreme Court held its position. And from the 22nd of February to the 3rd of March, where the Supreme Court gave a final verdict calling Mr. President's action an act of dictatorship. So, if you have a president who did not respect the Supreme Court's ruling on the narrow redesign policy, how do we know that the federal government will respect the court's ruling in the event that the court claims that the elections that brought about the victory of Bola Ahmed Tinubu were marred with irregularities and should actually call for a rerun? Would the government heed to the Supreme Court's ruling? That's a question most Nigerians are asking, and we'd like to hear from you as well on the program this morning. But not to forget, we'll be joined live in our studios by Carmen Ekemino David, who equally played an observation role at the February 25 post, with one look ahead to the March 11 showdown coming up this weekend. He'll be joining us to give us feelers as far as all of these are concerned. But feel free to join us via our studio lines and the numbers displayed on your screen. We'd love to hear from you as well. When I come back from the short break, we'll be taking in your reactions. Don't go anywhere.
The Presidential and National Assembly elections, which was held on Saturday, February 25th, witnessed reactions from different people across the country. Join us as we sample some of the reactions.
Elections, which are forms of choosing leaders where the citizens have rights to vote and be voted for, started in 1959 with different political parties. For 2023, Nigeria's Presidential and National Assembly election was held on February 25th to elect the President, members of Senate, and House of Representatives of the country. A total of 18 presidential candidates took part in the election, but 4 were considered major contenders. They include Atiku Abubakar of PDP, Bola Tinubu of APC, Peter Obi of Labour Party, and Rabiu Kwankwaso of NNPP. The elections, which were supposed to start at 8:30 a.m., did not start early in many polling units across Nigeria. However, the few polling units where the election started on time, voting ended as scheduled by INEC at 2:30 p.m. The general election, despite fuel and currency scarcity, was noted by initially high projected turnout and mainly peaceful voting, but was marred by reports of vote buying, voter intimidation, attacks on polling units in certain areas, and unpunctuality of electoral officials, along the accusation of outright fraud to compound issues with trust in the election. Aside the challenges of delay of electoral materials and technical issues, polling station allocations were also problematic, as some polling units had just a handful of voters, while others had more than 2,000.
Initially, when they brought the beaver, it wasn't used. So we, as a coordinator, took the beaver to the collation center, which is the ward centers, and the things was rectified. We now took it to the unit, and it was counted. It was functioning very well. But later, in different ways, in different polling units, said they have not been using the beaver. So I don't know, but by own they made use of it, and it was successful. As a teacher, as a proprietor, I find it difficult to pay my teachers. I wish that the government should do something about the issue of cashless policy.
I think the beavers function because some polling units, like my polling units, the beavers was used throughout the election. So I think the beavers function. Like today I went to a fuel station, removed my card. They said there is no need. Well, I have to, at least at that point, I was so frustrated. So this is as a result of the cashless policy. Though the timing is not very okay, what we are looking for, if they can bring up this cashless policy to the beer and everybody should go cashless. In fact, it could be okay. It will check excessive. It will check corruption in the other hand. So I think it's the best policy, sir.
Well, the election was, by the special grace of God, it was free and fair. Here in Akwa Ibom State, we found out that we saw everything, that the election was free and fair, and there's nothing we can do about it. He that the crowd thinks they give to. So the nation have seen that it was Tinubu alias Jagaban of Africa. So they don't have anything tough to say. Everybody has seen it, so they have given it to him, and we wish him all the best. Though the beavers in some units, here in Uyo, some units, it was not working, but immediately, like 8 or like 3 units I was, in the next 10 to 15 minutes, the INEC replaced the beavers back. So I'm talking about based on where I was. The beavers were not working, but they have to replace it with the new one, which they use the beavers.
I went to the bank to withdraw money. There was no money, and I was very, very hungry. Only 1,000. Look at what I bought. I bought this one, 100 naira. I couldn't buy this one, 50 naira. I was trying to do if I can manage 1,000 naira to feed. So this country is not good for us. We are suffering.
Cashless policy, personally, I thought the cashless policy was for the politicians who stash out the whole lot of money from the banking system to keep in their private home. But now that cashless policy, I don't think the thing is really working well, because the whole lot of masses are suffering because of it. So I think that if the CBN wanted to do something, you understand, to affect people, to affect those people that have stashed out those money from the economy, I think they would have stopped using, they wouldn't have print 500 and 1,000 naira again. They would have just print only 200 naira, 200 naira, 100 naira, 50 naira, 20 naira, 10 naira, and 5 naira.
Another issue raised by the civic group was the INEC Result Viewing Portal (IREV), which was designed to provide real-time transmission of election results from polling units to the Central Collection Center in an attempt to enhance the transparency of the electoral process and reduce the incidence of vote rigging and election manipulation. As of February 26, where election results were announced at the National Collection Center in Abuja. Most people aside the civic group also complained of INEC delay in uploading the election results in the IREV.
The result sheet was, if I vote, my vote will register on the BFAS and the results will go up automatically. That was the expectation of my own, unlike other people also. But as the result was announced early this morning, well, INEC have announced, as a person, I will not make any statement on the outcome, but this is not how the process were expected. I believe that by next election, if we were to use electronic voting, let it be a situation whereby I put in my card and my result is registered, and not a situation whereby a third.
What we expected. Look at what they do when football is played. They say VAR. When there's something wrong, they get back to the VAR, isn't it? But can we run back to the beavers right now to see if what was done of tears about?
The reason why people came.
You're still watching Political Spectrum on Spectrum Television. Responses from Nigerians in large numbers around the conduct of the February 25 polls, where Nigerians headed out to vote for a new president and representatives of both chambers of the National Assembly. Well, opinion is largely divided about the exercise because it's some expected to reverberate across the country with respect to the last elections that we saw. But disappointingly, just as opinion were divided, so were the incidences had to be replaced. There's absolutely nothing wrong, as many have also posited, that should the beavers malfunction in some areas, they should of course be replaced and probably used to manipulate the process. I mean, there was a particular polling unit here in the Akwa Ibom State capital, Uyo, where the voters who turned up at that polling unit discovered that the beavers that should have been used in that area or that polling unit was meant for another polling unit. And so they were asked to come back the following day on Sunday to actually vote. And that's because they could not have access to the authentic beavers that should have been used for that particular polling unit. And so the INEC officials told them you could come back the next day on Sunday. The elections were held. But to the utter dismay of the voters in that unit, they turned up on Sunday. There was no presence whatsoever of the INEC officials or the materials on ground for them to vote. So let's say over 800 persons in that unit were disenfranchised. But guess what? The result of that polling unit were announced. Now, how does that happen? How does it tally? So how can Nigerians trust and have faith that the same things will not be done come March 11? INEC issued a statement to say that they had inundated all the state's resident electoral commissioners about the proper conduct of the March 11 polls, and have said any erring staff who goes against its guidelines and policies would be made to face the full wrath of the law. The PDP described that statement as a medicine after death, because we would have thought that INEC would have properly inundated their staff about how to conduct themselves throughout the February 25 polls. Yesterday, we did cite issues around the youth. Those who were trained to be used as ad hoc staff for the elections were actually replaced 48 hours to the conduct of the polls. Now, who was responsible for that? And what extent has INEC gone to ensure that they checkmated these successes to prevent a recurrence, or coming out to say that all of these issues will be avoided and all of these glitches will be gone around by the time the March 11 governorship post comes up on Saturday? Perhaps the PDP is right by saying this is medicine after death. Yes, the governorship and the state houses of assembly bills are more or less grassroots governance that are a bit closer to the people. But so as important is the presidential and national assembly polls, because we're talking about who is going to, and all of those hopes were dashed by virtue of the kind of elections we saw on Saturday. Apart from incidences of irregularities and alleged manipulation, there were areas where violence were equally recorded. Lagos State in particular was a hotbed for election violence, and yet we did see results being announced in most places where ballot boxes were either snatched to the statement issued by the Nigerian army, who indicted Governor Nyesom Wike of Rivers State for mobilizing thugs to truncate the election process. Governor Wike was severally caught on camera, and several of his phone conversations leaked as well on social media, threatening INEC staff or election observers to connive with his thugs and members of his party to truncate the electoral process. Well, these are claims he has denied, but the Nigerian army has said, and in clear terms, that they will not be compromised as far as the conduct of this election is concerned. And perhaps that explains why many persons up until now do not understand Mr. President's body language as far as how he views this election is concerned. During the Africa-US Leadership Summit, which took place in the United States, President Joe Biden of the US described President Buhari as a model of democracy. Now, that summit took place back in December 2022, 2 months to the February 25 polls. And there you have the president of the most powerful country in the world describing President Buhari as a model of democracy and a model that other leaders in Africa should follow. Upon his return to the country, the president reiterated that he wants to leave behind a legacy for conducting the best elections in this country. Well, can the president stare at the mirror and say that what Nigerians saw on February 25 was a true reflection of his promise and the mandates given to INEC to conduct free, fair, and credible polls? Well, these are the issues I'll be getting your reactions on. You can join the conversation by calling us on the numbers displayed on your screen. But we'd like to advise that when you do join in, do well to keep your calls, your comments, and your contributions as moderate as possible. Otherwise, we might have to let you off the conversation. Just go straight to your point and let us know your expectations about the March 11 governorship and National Assembly polls, and also your review about the electoral umpire INEC with respect to what you saw on February 25. Do you have faith that INEC can get it right at a second time of asking, or you feel that the elections itself would stay largely compromised? We'll get your reactions on this. And don't forget, you can follow us on all our social media platforms, and do well to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well for live feeds. Just go to our website and search spectrumtv.ng. We, of course, love to hear from you. Well, let's attend to your calls now. Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome. What's your name? Where are you joining from?
I'm Samuel. I'm calling from Kwara State.
All right, joining us from Kwara State. Go ahead. What's your reaction?
My reaction is very simple, sir. If you look at the issue of this election, even a blind man knows that this is a tragedy for our country. Because what promises us that our vote will count. But I'm telling you the truth today, our vote did not count at all. Because if you look at this election, I don't understand how on earth INEC will conduct this type of election like this. The Election Act says the election should be transmitted, the device, that was it called, but it was not done. We are just praying to God. God should just look at us and have mercy on Nigeria, because this election is no near credible and fair election. This is sacrilege. While I urge the supporters, they should behave themselves. Nobody should die for a position. Be yourself and go, and don't allow anyone to use you. Let them go to court. Let the court take its course, so that we will have a country called our own.
All right, interesting points indeed. Many thanks for joining the conversation from Kwara State. Is equally of the opinion that aggrieved political parties lost out, according to INEC's figures from the February 25 polls, can channel their grievances to court. Well, that's something most of the opposition parties have said they will do. The Labour Party presidential candidate Peter Obi addressed a World Press Conference on Thursday last week, and he said he will reclaim his mandate in court. How feasible is that? Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning. All right, join us again if you can. The phone lines are still very much open. Just before we close up shop, just reiterating on those who hope to seek redress in court as far as fuming over the conduct of the last elections were concerned. Not just the Labour Party candidate, the NNPP presidential candidate Rabiu Kwankwaso has equally fumed at INEC over its conduct of the elections and have said they will also challenge the process in court, but have also said in the meantime the exercise should be outrightly cancelled. Hello, good morning to you. Yes, good morning.
I want to comment on Peter. Nobody believed that man. In fact, he surprised everybody. And this is the type of people we want in this country. It shouldn't be a two-party affair. We believe that this man surprised a lot of people because some people said they are just in the room tweeting. But Nigerians have known that this is not the business as usual. So I urge Peter they should go to court as PDP did. They should not resort to violence. But they should caution their people so that it should not cause any problem. They should just go to court and let the court do its job. Because even if not because of that, we knew that this election was like that. This is not the voice of people. We all know what is happening in this country. Even if you ask a beggar today that, do you want this current continue to say no? Because we have the money, we cannot even have access to our money. This is very, very bad. This is very bad. So I urge the political parties they should take the legal process. They shouldn't resort to violence. That's my take on this.
All right, thank you very much as well for joining us. We'll tend to more of your reactions. We'll go for another short breather. When we come back, we'll be talking to Comrade Ekemini David. He played a keen role in the election observation of the February 25 polls, and we'll certainly have an eye on what's to come this Saturday when Nigerians will head out to cast their vote to elect governors of their respective states. Stay with us. When we come back, Political Spectrum will continue. Don't go anywhere.
Sadly, some party members and agents still engage in election lobbying and vote buying by getting account details of some uninformed voters with promise to make transfer. Pan-Africanist Women Project condemned this in her strongest terms possible and recommend stiffer punishment for the offenders. Inducement was done across party lines. For instance, in Utumidim in Abak 008, and a PDP party agent was seen in the polling unit holding a bag of content where PVC belonging to voters. As the voters appear in the unit, he picked their card from the bag and attached money to them. In Ukot Okoro Primary School in Ancient Udim, voters were voting without the senatorial ballot papers. Also at the Civic Center, SCN Road, Ward 2, Unit 2A, APC chieftain asked voters on rising of 10 units. Thugs invaded the units and only APC voters were allowed to vote as the APO was compelled only accredited APC voters. Same scenario played out in Urban Unit 2, only APC members to vote. In Odoro, Ward 1 and Ward 2, and Ito, Ward 1 and 2, same incident happened. Ibono local government area, in Ward 6, Unit 5, the presidential results sheet was torn due to the fighting by voters as thugs emerged at the polling unit and to disrupt the voting process. At the end, our observation team intervened by speaking to the voters who remained calm until the INEC officials went to the RAC center to bring new result sheets. In Ward 11 and the entire units, there were no elections as sensitive material were burnt by thugs by YPP and PDP.
We recruited in the nation. So in Akwa Ibom, we had in the polling units 180 of them working with us. So every local government had observers. But what we are trying to do in this press briefing is to see how we can correct the ills. We are speaking not just to the media, we are speaking to the Independent National Electoral Commission, to the civil society organizations, because of malfunctioning of the beavers, because of men of the society who are called thugs that invaded polling units, carted away materials. So if INEC, who is an electoral body, is announcing results in polling unit that elections did not take place, then that is fraudulent. That's why we are speaking to the society, to the public, that INEC should go back this week on the 4th of March and conduct elections in places that voters were disenfranchised.
Welcome back and thanks for staying with us. You're watching Political Spectrum live on Spectrum Television. As promised, we've been joined live in the studios by our guest, Comrade Ekemini David. He is a public affairs analyst, civil rights activist, amongst other things. He joins us live on Political Spectrum. A very good morning to you, Comrade. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Brother Raymond. It's a pleasure of being here today. Good day to all the viewers out there. Thank you.
Let's get straight to it. Just yesterday, we had you over the phone and we're trying to review the performance of INEC over the February 25 polls, because everyone has their attention now fixated on March 11, an election most Nigerians would consider more important to them because it's the grassroots stage and it's a bit closer to them. But the failings of February 25 seems to be more than enough to, convince Nigerians that their votes truly did not count. I mean, this is the swan song that most Nigerians have had over the years, which has led to widespread voter apathy in previous elections. But for the first time in a long while, when you have 93 million persons on the voter register, it shows that a lot of persons were interested in the electoral process, but they seem to have had their fates and their hopes dashed with what we saw a couple of weeks ago. I wonder, do you still have concerns going into March 11 that INEC would indeed deliver on free, fair and credible polls?
Well, I have to be very much frank, as concerns this engagement, this deliberation. The truth remains that Nigerians were quite very much deliberate as regards the 25th of February National Assembly and presidential elections. But then, along the line, the Independent National Electoral Commission seemed not to have remained true or honest to what it had projected to Nigerians, in the build-up to these elections. From the fact that we saw the fact that most results were not the same thing Nigerians saw in their polling unit, and of course to the gross display of insensitivity and disregard for Nigerians or the opinions of Nigerians, by the INEC chairman. So all of these things culminates to the feeling of Nigerians, and of course believing that the Nigerian political system and the landscape generally, the democratic landscape, cannot be different from what it used to be. But then I have a word of I would want to say consolation to Nigerians, and of course that word is that revolution does not have to be centered at one tier of government, like I was trying to say yesterday. The truth of the matter is I understand the energy to get things better in Nigeria, and of course Nigerians are not channeling this energy wrongly. Now, the truth still remains that, like I said yesterday, if you had noticed clearly, most of the states where results were rigged, where results were manipulated, you would understand clearly that state governors and state actors played significant roles in these things prevailing. It simply means that the change has to occur across board, from the local to the state and of course to the federal government. My point is very clear and exact here to Nigerians. The governorship election is going to be very much different. I cannot speak on behalf of INEC because I am as well a Nigerian, and I cannot vouch for the commission. maybe before now, or maybe before 25th of February, you know, following what it had been saying, I would have to an extent vouched for the commission. But, you know, as a result of what it did on the 25th, 26th, and 27th, I am not exactly sure I can speak on you know, on behalf of that commission. Of course, I'm not constitutionally delegated to do that. But one thing I can promise Nigerians and, you know, everyone that is going to be involved in this election is that as Nigerian people, we had noticed the loopholes in the last national elections. We had known, we have spotted where the problems came from, where the POs and the APOs, the INEC officials and the people were able to manipulate the result. And, you know, the truth of the matter is that we cannot do one thing every time and expect a different result. So I am quite sure that as a result of this knowledge that we had, as a result of this awareness of where these loopholes are, I'm quite sure that we will not allow, as Nigerian people, will not allow most of these malpractices and irregularities to prevail again come March 11th. So one thing I can quite assure Nigerians is that where we could not place our hands and eyes on critically on the 25th, we would have been able to do that come 11th of March.
A lot of the results, as you've rightly posited, seem to have been manipulated, perhaps because some INEC officials were alleged to have been working in connivance with some political parties in states that happen to be their strongholds.
Exactly.
Rivers State is one of such that has been mentioned, so much so that the army came out to issue a statement indicting Governor Nyesom Wike of using thugs to truncate the process.
Exactly.
We might see a lot of that happen in the March 11 showdown, because you have governors who are actually vacating the seat, wanting to plant their stooges before they leave office, some of them seeking for re-election. So there's a likelihood that cases of INEC staff conniving with political parties to truncate the electoral process would definitely happen again. Let's come to Akwa Ibom State now. During the February 25 post, the police issued a statement through the PRO, Odiko McDon, noting that a particular bus was apprehended by the Nigerian army conveying fake soldiers with ballot boxes and beavers. Although their location or their onward location wasn't made clear to the public, they said they were still investigating it. But we do know that the APC in Akwa Ibom issued a statement to that effect, claiming that these men were actually going to the government house, meaning that the PDP had orchestrated this. Now, these are the concerns most persons have had as well, whether or not the governorship elections here in Akwa Ibom State, like every other part of the country, would equally be free and fair if the ruling parties in this state still try to influence the process.
Okay, you see, the truth of the matter is that in every political setting, I'm going to be speaking, you know, both as a social activist and of course as a spokesperson of a campaign organization too. Now, in every political setting or any political era, people in those eras, in those settings, have always done everything within their means to make sure that they advance their political causes. We must not eliminate this fact. But the truth of the matter is that where we tend to see sanity or insanity is in what these people actually do in progressing or in advancing these causes. Like, you know, there are some persons who have, instead of orchestrating these problems and anti-democratic menaces everywhere, persons are already very much committed to duly sensitizing the public and getting the public aware of the party logos that would be on the ballot paper so that the people will go in there and evenly vote. Now, you see, to have, you know, to have placed fake soldiers on you know, in buses with beavers machines and all of those things are things that are likely supposed to be true. Because, you know, I am not saying this to spite anybody, but then, you know, our people used to say that you begin to learn how to die by sleeping. Now, with the very many things we've seen indicated in this state, I mean, one would simply say, well, of course, the ruling party may have attempted doing so. Of course, I'm not saying they did, but I mean, from the indices that we've been seeing, from the indicators we've been seeing, one would simply believe that, all right, look, the ruling party is quite responsible or guilty of doing this. But then one thing I want to state clearly to Nigerians and Akwa Ibomites is very clear, and I think it is a message to the federal government. It's also a message to the commission, like I had said yesterday, that Nigerians are furious. Nigerians are angry, and if for any reason, if for any cause of convictions, Nigerians are driven to come out on the 11th of March again for these elections. I am putting it clearly that the leadership of the commission, the INEC chairman, the federal government should ensure that the INEC officials are properly guided, because any attempt to manipulate or any attempt to seem as though you want to get something done against the electoral practices, I am sorry, most INEC officials may be seriously injured, and if they are not also very careful, we may have to, we may have so much casualties in this particular election. So my word is that angry persons are not to be joked with. Nigerians are angry, courtesy of the 25th of February election. So we've got to be very, very careful when it comes to the 11th of March election. Now, lastly, what I want to say is that on the political side, I understand that certain political parties will attempt, especially the parties in power in the state government, they would attempt to rig elections, they would attempt to impose their stooges, like you had rightly said. But then one thing I want to put clearly politically here is that in the cases of Akwa Ibom people or any other state where the party in the state is not the same party at the center, there could be some certain sense of hope, because we have known over the times and over the years that where the party in the center is trying to play smart by imposing anybody on seat against the will of the people, and of course where the party is not in tandem with the party at the center, some legal issues would always rise, and of course luckily it would always play in favor of the opposition as against the party in the state. So one thing I'm saying for sure is that whether or not the party in power in Akwa Ibom state has made attempts to rig election, whether they have intentions to bring issues and bring violence, whether they have orchestrated plans to impose, we'll be going out to vote for someone very much different. So, and the truth of the matter remains that Akwa Ibom people will be ready to resist at all sides every attempt, any attempt. You must be very vigilant, must be very active. Don't allow your polling agent alone to do the job. Stay in your polling unit. If the PO or the INEC official refuses to upload the result, make sure you insist for him to upload the result. Even if it means tying him down there, put the person down there and ensure the person uploads the result. Akwa Ibomites are ready for the change.
You've already made it obvious that you do have a soft spot for a particular political party.
Yeah.
I like to believe you're referencing the Young Progressives Party, the YPP.
Certainly.
As much as we have those underlying claims that yes, the ruling parties in some of these states may try to truncate the process.
Certainly.
Let's narrow the argument now to Akwa Ibom state, where the PDP is the ruling party.
Yeah.
But at the center, we have an All Progressives Congress ruling party, who, by the way, have their standard bearer declared as president-elect of the country. Yeah. So who's to say that the APC at the national level may not also want to truncate the process here in the states, just so they instill a member of their own party to have a sway in the election? So meaning you may be having, two battles, to deal with.
You see, Raymond, my brother, let me quickly answer this from a political perspective. Not just a political perspective, but of course from a reality perspective. The truth of the matter is that officially we have top two candidates on the ballot. The candidate of the Young Progressives Party, distinguished Senator Basi Albert, and of course that's of the People's Democratic Party, Umoino. Now, you don't say the APC, which is the party at the center, has a candidate yet. No, they don't have a candidate yet. As I speak to you, they have gone for the Supreme Court case today. Today is 7th of March. So you cannot say the APC has a candidate when, of course, they have not settled the issue they have at court. So as we speak to you,
there's a likelihood that at the end of the day,
we cannot be banking on likelihood. We are talking about what is in vogue now. The APC does not have a candidate yet, and that is what we know. We only have two top candidates, that are suddenly on the ballot. And like I said earlier, it is my candidate, distinguished Senator Basi Albert, and then that of the PDP. I don't want to mention his name. Do you understand? For the APC, there is no candidate. So we are hoping that it remains so. And when it remains so, I mean, of course, you will certainly know that the APC at the center is not in tandem with the PDP here in the state. And so we are very much sure that while Akwa Ibom people will be doing their best to deliver distinguished Senator Basi Albert, whatever happens, we have the legal backups and we have the legal justifications to make sure that the mandate is gotten where there is an attempt to manipulate. But I can bet you no party in this state can thrive with that manipulation. It's not going to stand this time around. Akwa Ibom people will be winning, and Basi Albert is the face of that victory.
One last line before we go now. A lot of persons I've spoken to after February 25 all told me, I'm going to throw that voter's card into the dustbin. I'm never going to have to use it again unless for documentation process, because they were so angry at what they saw on February 25. How do you now start convincing millions of people to come out on Saturday to vote in the hopes that what happened on February 25 will not repeat itself again?
Well, the truth of the matter is that the government closer to the people the most is the state government. And then whether we like it or not, if we truly want Nigeria to change, if we truly want to cause the revolution in Nigeria, we cannot be discouraged as a result of the faultiness that has been notified or that has been noticed at one level. Nigeria has to be changed, and we are deliberate about it. It means we have to be committed to every process that has to do with it. I keep telling people something. Nelson Mandela had wrote a book, and he said, long walk to freedom. Freedom is a very long path. And I put it clearly again that freedom is cumulative. It does not just occur. It does not happen. People keep building up. People keep walking. People keep marching. So Akwa Ibomites, Nigerians in all states must still go out and vote if we want to change this nation. Change begins from the grassroots. You don't expect to change just the top. And like I said clearly, most of the results manipulated were caused, orchestrated, facilitated by state governors. And so if we still have the same polluted people at the state level, we cannot be sure of having a refined and of course a newly placed federal government. So we've got to cause this revolution at all phases, at all tiers, at all levels of governance. That is my word to everyone. And we must go out for the March 11th election and make sure that our votes count. One last thing I want to say is that votes count. That is why they are rigged. Thank you very much.
Interesting comment. We hope to have you some of the time, of course, perhaps in the lead up to the elections this weekend. But thank you so much for joining us on
It's all right. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Well, that's the far we can go on today's edition of the show. We'll be back again tomorrow. God's willing. Keep a date with us when next the program would come your way. But coming up next is Business 360 with Blyden. And make sure you stay on for more programs right here on Spectrum TV. From me, Raymond Ita, and the rest of the crew, thanks for watching. Bye for now.